Montreal threw all the conditions at the drivers during the Canadian Grand Prix, but it was Red Bull with Max Verstappen on the top step of the podium. Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz fought out a great duel which ended with a 6th win of the season for the reigning world champion. A promising weekend for Mercedes and especially Lewis Hamilton to grab P3. With Sergio Perez's DNF in Canada, it is Red Bull who is still leading the championship by 76 points ahead of Ferrari, while Max Verstappen extends his lead to 46 points in the Drivers' Championship ahead of his teammate Sergio Perez. After every race I will rate each driver's weekend out of 10. My verdict will be based on each driver's qualifying and the race performance. Max Verstappen. Rating 10 out 10. Max was comfortably fastest across both Friday practice sessions and especially in the rain no one was able to match him. Max claimed his 15th pole position during a wet qualifying in Montreal, setting the pace in Q1, Q2 and Q3 ending up 0.6 seconds clear of Alonso in P2. In the race he led from the start and pulled a 3-second gap to Carlos before stopping early during the virtual safety car. But the late safety car left him vulnerable against Carlos on fresher tires. However, the Dutchman absorbed the pressure from the Ferrari behind and made no mistakes to give a chance to his former teammate. Max claimed his 6th win of the season and overall a perfect weekend for the world champion. This gives him 10 out 10 for a perfect weekend. Carlos Sainz. Rating 8.5 out 10. Carlos was regularly in the top 3 during practice sessions and he was in the fight for pole position along with Max, but lost half a second to Alonso in his final attempt in Q3 which costed him P2 in qualifying. In the race the Spaniard held 3rd position early on but overtook Alonso in the 3rd lap of the race. He stayed out under the early virtual safety car but pitted under the 2nd virtual safety car. Carlos was 7.5 seconds ahead when the late safety car was deployed which allowed him to pit and come out behind Max on fresher tires. He tried to pressure Max for the lead after the restart but ultimately could not get close enough to pass him. Overall it was a strong weekend from Carlos to finish P2 less than 2nd behind the winner. This gives him 8.5 out 10. Lewis Hamilton. Rating 8 out 10. Lewis Hamilton secured P4 in the wet qualifying. This was his best qualifying of the season. In the race Lewis held 4th position until pitting under the 1st virtual safety car. He later pitted again to regain the 3rd position after his teammate's pit stop. Lewis could not challenge the top 2 but pulled a gap to his teammate in 4th position after the safety car restart. Overall a great weekend for Lewis Hamilton, by performing well in both qualifying and the race. This gives him 8 out 10. George Russell. Rating 7.5 out 10. George was faster than his teammate in all 3 practice sessions. He took a gamble in Q3 on slick tires but spun at turn 2 due to the wet track. In the race George passed Ocon and Magnussen for P5 and stayed out during the 1st virtual safety car before pitting on the 2nd virtual safety car. Overall George had good pace in the race to get P4 in the end. This gives him 7.5 out 10. Charles Leclerc. Rating 8 out of 10. Charles was forced to start from the back row after Ferrari changed his whole power unit. In the race Charles overtook Gasly and Stroll over the first 3 laps. He continued to gain positions as cars ahead of him pitted. Eventually Charles pitted but a slow stop costed him around 3 seconds and he rejoined behind a group of cars he already overtook. He gained positions one by one and ended by P5. Overall good pace in the race from Charles and solid P5 finish on a weekend of damage limitation, which gives him 8 out of 10 for the weekend. Esteban Ocon. Rating 7 out of 10. Esteban was on the back foot compared to Alonso in practice sessions and in qualifying. On his final run in Q3 he lost a lot of time in the final 2 corners which left him 1.6 seconds of his teammate. In the race Ocon ran P6 until he pitted under the 2nd virtual safety car and eventually gained P5 ahead of his teammate. The Frenchman later dropped to P6 after being passed by Charles in the Ferrari. This gives him 7 out of 10. Valtteri Bottas. Rating 6.5 out 10. The Finn looked to have the pace for Q3 but ended up short in P11. This was due to a lock-up in turn 1 on his final attempt in Q2. His lock-up costed up significant time but missed Q3 by 4 tenths. In the race, Valtteri lost couple of places in the first lap as he locked up and cut the final corner. Valtteri opted to run long in the race, which paid off as he made his only pit stop during the safety car. He finished in 8th position but later was promoted to P7 due to Alonso's penalty. Good points for Valtteri in the end. This gives him 6.5 out of 10. Guan Yu Zhou, rating 8 out 10. Zhou reached Q3 for the first time in his career and outqualified his teammate twice. On his Q2 final attempt, he delivered a strong lap to advance to Q3. In the race, Zhou was running in 8th position early in the race until he pitted under second virtual safety car. After his pit stop, he got stuck behind Lance Stroll. Due to the lack of Alpha's top speed, Zhou couldn't overtake the Canadian even on fresher tires. As Stroll pitted ahead of him, he was released and pitted under the safety car. Overall, very strong weekend from Zhou, out-qualifying his teammate and grabbing points for the team. This gives him 8 out of 10. Fernando Alonso, rating 8.5 out 10. His pace showed through in qualifying as well, where he pulled a special lap out of the bag to qualify P2 ahead of his countryman Carlos Sainz. It was his first front row start since 2012 German Grand Prix. Alonso's qualifying lap was special as he took few risks throughout the lap. In the race, he held his position but was later passed by Carlos in the Ferrari. Fernando had a MGUK related problem which slowed him down, however he still got P7 in the end, but earned a 5 seconds penalty after the race which dropped him to P9. Overall, very strong weekend by Alonso, outshining his teammate in qualifying by 1.6 seconds, which gives him 8.5 out 10. Lance Stroll, rating 6 out of 10. Lance Stroll struggled in his home Grand Prix. With Aston Martin's tyre pressure problem and overall pace, he never looked to advance into Q2 despite showing great pace in FP3. In the race, Lance ran very long on his first stint starting on hard tyres. However, he made his pit stop just before the safety car came out, which allowed Zhou to overtake him. But 1 point in the end was a good return after a tough qualifying session. This gives him 6 out of 10. Daniel Ricciardo, rating 5.5 out of 10. Daniel was confident in the car from the first practice session. He was able to advance into Q3 but couldn't improve his time as the track dried up. In the race, the Australian was down to P10 until he stopped under the second virtual safety car and had a slow stop which allowed Vettel to jump him. Overall, Daniel was comfortable in the car throughout the whole weekend and he even outqualified his teammate but still couldn't get any points. This gives him 5.5 out of 10. Sebastian Vettel, rating 5 out of 10. The Aston Martin of Vettel looked quick in the wet FP3, but the pace vanished in qualifying, as Vettel was eliminated in Q1 to start the race from P17. In the race, he stopped early during the first virtual safety car and the second virtual safety car. He climbed to P9 but was overtaken by Ricciardo and Stroll on fresher tyres. Overall, Vettel was quick, but Aston Martin's tyre pressure problem costed four-time champion a good qualifying position. This gives him only 5 out of 10. Alex Albon, rating 6 out 10. In the wet qualifying, Albon made great effort to get P12 starting position, which is his best qualifying this season, but in the race he pitted just before the second virtual safety car, which dropped to P16 from P12. After this, he couldn't able to finish higher. Overall, strong showing from Albon in both qualifying and the race, outpacing his teammate by a long margin. This gives him 6 out of 10. Pierre Gasly, rating 4.5 out of 10. In qualifying, the Frenchman was eliminated in Q1 due to a front left brake never getting up to temperature. In the first lap of the race, Gasly dropped to P17 from P15 due to high temperatures on his car. He had no pace throughout the race due to high temperatures from his brakes and lack of rear grip. Overall, difficult weekend for Pierre. This gives only 4.5 out of 10. Lando Norris, rating 5 out of 10. In qualifying, a power unit problem ruined Q2 for Lando, leaving him no chance to advance into Q3. For the race, the team switched his power unit, but any hopes for points was long gone. McLaren made a mess in pit stop, costing Norris 19 seconds, which dropped him to P15 in the end. Overall, reliability affected his weekend with a mess of a pit stop made by McLaren in the race. This only gives him 5 out of 10. Nicholas Latifi, rating 3 out of 10. On Saturday, he didn't have an ideal setup for the car and was eliminated from Q1. His teammate out-qualified him by 1.6 seconds. In the race he made no progress from his starting position, but the Canadian at least overtook Kevin later in the race for a P16 finish. He was way off his teammate's pace both in qualifying and the race, which gives him only 3 out of 10. Kevin Magnussen, rating 7 out of 10. In qualifying, Kevin made it into Q3 quite comfortably and set the 5th fastest time ahead of his teammate. In the race he challenged Lewis Hamilton into turn 3 for 4th position, but a contact damaged his front wing end plate. This led to him being given a black and orange flag, which forced him to pit for repairs. After his pit stop he ran 63-lap stint and eventually ended up P17. A very strong qualifying from Kevin, but the contact on the first lap followed by black and orange flag destroyed his day. This gives him 7 out of 10. Yuki Tsunoda, rating 2 out of 10. He took a new power unit for the weekend which made him start at the back of the grid with Charles alongside. In the race he made little progress, making his first pit stop under the first virtual safety car. But he made a second pit stop, and when he came out the pits he slid into the wall at turn 2, which ended his race. His mistake made his weekend worse, which gives him only 2 out of 10. Mick Schumacher, rating 7 out of 10. In qualifying Mick made the most of the wet conditions and achieved his best qualifying position. But a messy last attempt in Q3 made his P5 into a disappointment for the German. In the race Schumacher ran in 8th position before moving up to 6th. But a power unit problem ended his race. Overall solid weekend for Mick, qualifying P5 just behind his teammate, but the reliability of the Ferrari power unit costed him his first points in Montreal. This gives him 7 out of 10. Sergio Perez, rating 4.5 out of 10. In Q1 Sergio was only 13th fastest but made it into Q2. However, in Q2 he locked the inside front wheel into turn 3 and slid into the barriers. This ended his qualifying being only 13th. In the race he overtook some cars and was running in 10th position until a gearbox problem occurred on lap 8, which ended his race. Sergio made a mistake in qualifying which costed his starting position. Despite this he made good progress in the race, but the reliability problem costed him probably a podium. This gives Perez only 4.5 out of 10. Here were my full drivers' ratings of the Canadian Grand Prix. If you liked the video, please subscribe to the channel, and let me know if you agree with me on my driver ratings.